you for the introduction. I didn't ask any language model what to do after a cello piece, and thank you for the beautiful cello. So this talk might be a bit less poignant than the previous one. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Mistral AI. We build frontier AI models, and we try to put them in everyone's hands. This is a brief history of the company, and the company itself is less than a year old, so it still fits on one slide. We started in May 2023. 3 months later, we released our first open source model, which gathered more than 2 million downloads on Hugging Face. It was, at the time, a model that was as good as models that were twice its size. And the 7 billion parameter size is really nice because it lets everyone really experiment with it and put it in weird places like Raspberry Pi or what have you. 3 months later, we released another type of model, which we called Mistral AI-7B. The weird name comes from the different architecture that we used. It's a sparse mixture of expert. And at the time, and probably still today, it is the world's best open source model. We also released, at the same time, our platform to make our models available to everyone, and we added a new commercial model on there, which is called Mistral Medium. We announced a bunch of strategic partnerships in February in the goal of really making our models available everywhere. Our commercial models are available on Azure, on AWS and GCP. You can get our open source models today. And we have partnerships with Capgemini and Snowflake. And at that same time, we also released our chat, which is a way for people to test and interact our models without having to go through an API, so it's a bit easier. We also released Mistral Large, which starts to scrape at GPT-4 performance, and hopefully soon will go way beyond. So that's what we do at Mistral AI. We focus on getting the best performance at a certain cost, and so that's why we build the models in the way that we do, ramping up the sizes one after the other, and ensuring that always we keep the best performance for a given scale, which is also a given cost. Our technology is portable, and we try to make it deployable wherever it needs to be deployed, so it can be through our API or on your favorite cloud. And the fact that our models are open weight allows client-side customization, because as Replit has shown, or Meditron, you don't necessarily need a trillion parameter to solve your problem. If you customize a small model well enough, then you can go a long way. So today, our family of models has 5 members. 2 are open source. There is the 7B model, which is still very good for its size, and our sparse mixture of experts model. I'll dive into the details of this in the second part of this presentation. They have received wide adoption, and you can find lots of resources online to use them for yourself or fine-tune them to your needs. Then we have our enterprise-grade models. Small is good for anything that is latency critical and doesn't require that much reasoning. And for everything else, you have large. All of our models are multilingual. We focused on the languages that are closest to us because it's easier to understand whether or not the models are good in those languages. We can actually interact with the model and figure it out. We will be extending the languages to a lot more, but that involves recruiting lots of people from those areas as well. We also have an embedding model, which enables all of the retrieval use cases, which are very frequent. In terms of accessibility, there is the API on that platform. You can use your favorite public cloud, or you can deploy on any infrastructure that you like. The scale being ease of deployment. If you just go to that platform, it takes like 5 minutes to get an account and talk to a model. If you want to go the self-deployment route, it's a bit more involved. In terms of capabilities, because everyone before me also had a numbers slide, so I'm doing the same. The benchmark of choice is MMLU, multitask language understanding. What's nice about this benchmark is that it still correlates well with the overall model capabilities. And so at the time this was made, Claude hadn't released its latest model. Claude 3 would be ahead of us on this slide, sadly. But we're just getting started. Now, I'll dive a bit deeper into the details of Mistral, the sparse mixture of experts model, because lots of people by now, and I'm surprised to say this, I wouldn't have expected this 2 years ago, are familiar with the transformers architecture. So I'll just dive a little bit and give some intuition as to what is a sparse mixture of experts. This is your standard transformer block with your multi-head attention and a feed-forward layer. The intuition behind the sparse mixture of experts is that some tokens might need different parts of the network to be processed. Like you aren't going to use everything in your brain to process every bit of information that comes at you. And so in order to implement this intuition into the network, what we do is we multiply the feed-forward part of the network, and we make 8 copies of it. And a token goes through a router, which will say, OK, this needs to be processed by these 2 layers instead of the entire 8. And we'll then sum the results. What this does is that we have 8x more available parameters, so the model is bigger, but only a fourth is active during compute. So even though our model is 8x bigger, we only pay 2x the inference cost. What this translates to is this second slide about performance, I guess, where we see that the Mistral model has only 14 billion active parameters, so the cost of inference is 14 billion, but it matches the 70 billion parameters in performance still on the same NMLU benchmark. So this was in, I guess, 10 months. What's next? Our focus is to enable more accessible customization of all of our models. We've seen that it's critical to make the models very fast and efficient. And so we will try to target making this as accessible and easy as possible. We will, of course, continue improving our performance at larger scales. Now that we have Mistral Large, we'll have to go even larger. And this will allow us to get things that are better than the Claude 3 and GPT-4s of this world. And we'll, of course, continue to push the boundaries of open source performance. I think being in the Llama project at the time, it was fantastic to see what happens when you release something that is useful to the world. And so it's really something that we want to keep on doing. And that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Let's also have a seat. We have plenty of time for discussions. I think we actually have more than the 10 minutes. And yeah, you once again have the code, because I'm sure there's plenty of questions. Good. So, needless to say, I mean, what you've shown here is just quite mind-boggling. Congrats again for these achievements. It's incredible. Now, let's maybe go back first. We go to the beginning. You had this slide, and it said, we started, the 3 of us, with 100 million seed funding. That's not usually how most startups begin. So what's the story there? How did this happen? How is that possible?
So the way this happened is we came in at a time where OpenAI was there and ChatGPT had happened. People knew the value of what we wanted to build. People also knew the cost. And so we were like, hey, we know how to build these models. We've done it many times. And we will be very efficient at using any dollars you can give us, but we need lots of money to start.
Yeah. But so you're saying you basically, because you were part of the Llama team, you had this credibility also that came with it.
Guillaume and I had llama, Arthur had chinchilla, lots of animals all around. But the short of it is we had been working in this space for a while. Guillaume and Arthur longer than I, but yeah.
Yep. And so, how do you now see this open source discussion pan out? I mean, so you, I think, came on the radar for most people with these early models, as you showed. Now you're releasing the large one, and part of those will also be open, part not. What's the strategic pitch? So do I understand this correctly? I mean, ultimately, you're making the business with the most performant large models, but underneath you keep releasing these smaller models as open source. Is that the core idea?
That's historically correct. I guess what we want to do is be careful. So we're doing two things. We're building models. We're also building a business, and it's difficult to think strategically on like how you build models, how you build a business, and also do these things at the same time.
Yeah.
The safest bet is for us to release the models that are easily usable by the community, so the scales at which that we've released. For the larger ones, it's less clear the impact that it would have. We're thinking about it, but we'll take it slow. Because we don't want to just, like, we've built this very valuable thing. We're not immediately going to release it into the wild and say, hey, this is it, while we still haven't really had time to figure out our business.
Yeah. So you're how many people at the moment?
Today we're 35.
35, okay. So, and I mean, I have to some extent ask you a bit bluntly, but what's the secret sauce here? I mean, you were such a small team. You came out of nowhere last year. I mean, seemingly, obviously. You beat kind of the top performing models in the world with clearly much fewer resources. So what are you doing differently? To the extent that you can divulge it.
So I think we're not doing that many things differently. I think what the recipe that we've honed before, it's like we've had the chance to run many of those experiments in our previous lives. When we started Mistral, we had to start with what we knew worked. And the recipe that we knew worked was something that was apparently good enough. We made it better by playing with a few parameters and working a lot on data, which is not the sexiest part of the job. But if you have very clean data, then your models will get better. So a lot of the work was actually Guillaume teaching me what clean data looks like, and I don't know, standing behind me and saying, no, this is wrong, just do it again.
Okay, so the secret source is clean data.
Yeah.
Now, we heard, so you're a European company, though as you mentioned, some of the money that you raised, I mean, a significant part is also from the US. We read sometimes in various magazines, you know, including The Economist and so on, that there was also a push from I think the French government to make sure that somehow the EU AI Act would not all of a sudden stop the homegrown innovation with which you guys were meant. So you find yourselves, I mean, again, you're less than 1 year old, just to this sinks in for everybody, and yet you find yourself in this geopolitical conversations all of a sudden. What does that do to you? How does that feel? Can you actually concentrate on your work and say, oh, I need to clean the data and so on?
Yeah, what happens is that we send Arthur into these discussions while we do the work. We have very clear separation of concerns between the three founders, and Arthur has handled all of this very well. And we've had support from our advisors as well around all of these topics. We've had support from the government. I think the idea with the European discussion was that it's a new technology. We were worried that the regulation would really be at would be a bit broad at the scale that we were at. We're happy with the way that the way it's formulated now. Basically, the way foundation models are going to evolve is not completely clear to anyone today. What's clear is how they're being applied today. And so this, we feel, is understandable and safe to regulate. Around what we do, basically, the fear was having something that's too broad for us to support and understand, or being left out of the conversation, basically, because there are all of these huge players that are there every day setting standards and everything. So we wanted to be part of that conversation.
Makes sense. So maybe a slightly geopolitical question in a sense, but you raised a bunch of money, and of course that's necessary because we all know this is incredibly resource intensive. Was that easy to do as a European company, or was that rather challenging? Because we often hear, well, there's not enough VC capital in Europe. What was your experience there?
Yeah, I don't think our experience should be the measuring stick for how easy or hard it is to raise money in Europe. Thankfully, we managed to do it. It wasn't full European money because the ecosystem there seems a bit fragmented, and it is sometimes easier to get larger chunks of money from US investors.
Yeah, okay. Let's switch to a quick technical question. So the question is, do you train the 8 experts separately and then plug them together, or do you train them at the same time?
No, we trained them at the same time. It's been very interesting seeing after the release what people imagined the training to be like. Everything is trained at the same time.
Okay.
And the experts are not the experts that you would expect given the description. We don't have like a math model, a medical model, and some others that are plugged together. They're very hard to distinguish from one another.
Yeah. And maybe to piggyback on that, when can we get Mistral Vision or other multimodal?
Mistral Vision is something that we are working on, but we have been slightly slow to go down our recruiting pipeline. So now that the company is growing, we actually have time to focus on this a little bit. So a multimodal model will happen.
Okay, great. So that's a great segue actually to the next question. As you grow this company, what is currently your biggest pain point? Where's your major blocker? Is it in the hiring? Is it in access to GPUs? What's your trouble?
It's time. Like, we don't have time to do all of the things that we want.
Yeah.
Compute, the difficult thing around compute is that you have to plan really far ahead, which is not something that any of us is accustomed to doing. Like, when you're in a lab and you're doing research, I mean, you have the resource, you can ask for more, but other people are doing it. Now I'm here having to plan 6 months in advance when like 6 months prior we were like 3 months old, so it's difficult. In terms of recruiting, I didn't expect the time it takes to actually hire people. And so at the start, we were often in the position where we were always thinking, okay, we have enough people, we can do whatever, and then 2 weeks later, we're like, okay, we need 10 more people today, and it doesn't happen.
And why does it take time, in your experience, to hire people? Is it just because you are very picky and you just want the best engineers, or is there something administrative that's blocking as a European company?
It's both. In France, you have to wait for 3 months for people to leave a company in most cases. Sometimes you can negotiate. I don't know how it is in other European countries.
Okay. It's much better here.
Okay. Well, then come join us. We are being a bit picky, and we have large recruitment pipelines, so we have to take the time sometimes to sit down and just filter through all of the applications, then take time to interview, and it's hard to balance the time that you spend doing this and the time that you spend shipping things.
Yep. Okay, I want to just, because we are also running out of time, as everybody else, nevertheless, I want to take the chance. I mean, so here you are, the founder, co-founder of this incredible performing model, and I want to take it up a notch. So where do you see this going, right? As you've undoubtedly seen during the early release of ChatGPT, all of a sudden there was a lot of panic in the room, the fear of AGI. Do people confront you with these kinds of things, or are you still sort of a bit under the radar? And independent of whether you say yes or no, what do you think about this concern? Is it warranted, or is it completely ludicrous?
So people have come to us and asked about AGI and said it was what we were doing was dangerous. I don't know whether we'll get AGI or whether it's dangerous. The bias that you have working on these things is that you see where they fail, and I don't see myself being killed by an AI today or tomorrow. They are quite limited today by the tools that you give them, and this is slightly changing, but this is still very much in our control. The fact that it is a valid fear or not, I don't know, but I wouldn't want this to be the main debate about the safety of these things. I think there are a lot, you can debate about how they're going to impact society and what we should be doing to prepare ourselves. There are going to be people that are going to become more efficient. There are people that don't have access to these tools today that cannot learn how to use them and be the workers of tomorrow, basically. So that's one problem that we can prepare for today and that we can address. A problem that we have with these models is bias. And if everyone everywhere is adding models without proper care, you might have very difficult to detect bias in lots of applications. That would also be bad. And so I don't know if AGI is going to happen or not, but I think for AGI we have lots of time to think about it. For these problems, I think we should start to tackle them today.
Okay. And what would you consider is the best forum to do that?
I mean, I think that's what the European AI Act started doing in a way by regulating the applications a little bit, asking. I mean, I think people are quite aware that there are risks of biases, and so I think on this, I'm quite confident that it's out of my hand and we're all collectively doing the right thing.
Yeah.
For making the models available and making it possible for everyone to learn how to use those, I think we're helping a little bit by opening our model weights and making them easily available, basically.
And maybe just finally, where you have just had this incredible journey now for 10 months. So can you project yourself 10 months out and imagine where you will be? Or do you, I mean, how do you think about this? You think about this, no, this was just, we went from 0 to 100. So from now on, it's going to be much more incremental. Or will you just continue that trajectory?
I keep hoping that things will be a bit calmer. They don't seem to get more calm. I still get excited about what we're going to be able to achieve in the future. So I don't think I'm able to project what Mistral is going to be like in 10 months. But there are like a certain set of things that I would like to have achieved by then.
All right. Well, I think these are good, famous last words. I hope it will be a bit calmer. And so I guess we can end on those. And again, thank you so much for what you are doing and how you're doing. I mean, it's also extremely cool the way you release these models. And it's incredible to see such a success story right here in Europe. So congratulations again. And thanks for coming. Ciao.